Thank you for choosing to watch my story. In a quiet village called NAKATA, there lived a kind but weary woman named Ada. Ada lived in a small hut with her son, Kobe, who was her only joy in life. Her husband had passed away years ago during a terrible storm, leaving Ada to care for Kobe all on her own. Every day, Ada worked tirelessly, but no matter how much she did, it was never enough. The land was dry, food was scarce, and Kobe, who used to be a lively and cheerful boy, had grown thin and quiet. Ada's heart broke every time she looked into his sad, hungry eyes. Each morning, Ada would wake before the sun, fetching water from the stream, gathering firewood, and working the cracked soil of her small farm. Despite all her effort, the little food she managed to grow barely kept them alive. When she went to the village market, she found that even a single yam cost more than she could afford. Kobe used to love playing with the other children, but now he was too weak. He spent most of his days sitting quietly, his once round cheeks now hollow. Ada would sit beside him, stroking his hair and whispering, "Don't worry, my son. Mama will make things better." But deep inside, Ada wasn't sure how much longer she could keep going. One night, after an especially hard day, Ada sat outside her hut, staring at the bright full moon. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered, "I just need one day to rest. One day without hunger, pain, or sorrow." She didn't know why she spoke those words aloud, but it felt like the stars were listening. She repeated her wish softly, "Just one day of peace." Suddenly, the wind stopped blowing. The air grew cold and still. Ada felt a strange presence, and at the edge of the forest near her hut, a shadow began to form. Her heart raced as the shadow moved closer, taking the shape of a tall figure draped in black. "Who's there?" Ada called out, her voice trembling. The figure's voice was soft, like the wind, and it replied, "You called for me." Ada's fear turned to confusion. "Who are you?" she asked. "I am Rest," the figure said. Ada gasped. "You mean death?" "Yes," the figure replied. "You wished for rest, and I have come to grant it." Ada hesitated. "What do you mean by rest?" "You may borrow me for one day," Death said. "For one day, you will feel no pain, no hunger, no sorrow. You will sleep in peace. But remember, if you borrow me too often, one day may not give your life back." Ada thought about the offer. She was desperate for relief, but she also loved her son. "Just one day?" she asked. "Yes, only one day," Death assured her. After a moment of silence, Ada nodded. "I just need one day." Death raised a shadowy hand and gently touched her forehead. Instantly, Ada's world faded into darkness, and she fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. The next morning, Kobe woke up to find his mother lying still on the floor. "Mama," he cried, shaking her gently, but she didn't move. Panicked, he ran out of the hut, calling for help. The villagers rushed Ada's hut and found her lifeless body. Some began to cry, while others whispered prayers. "She's gone," one elder said sadly. They started preparing to bury her, but the village healer, a wise old man named Obie, stopped them. "Her spirit has not traveled far," Obie said. "Do not bury her yet. We must wait until tomorrow." The villagers were puzzled but trusted Obie's wisdom. They left Ada's body in the hut and spent the night praying for her soul. At sunrise the next morning, Ada suddenly gasped for air and opened her eyes. The villagers were stunned. "She's alive," they shouted. Kobe hugged his mother tightly, crying tears of joy. Ada held him close, whispering, "I'm here, my son." The villagers called it a miracle, but Ada knew the truth. She had borrowed rest and returned to life. At first, Ada felt renewed. The rest she experienced during her death was peaceful and calming. But soon, the struggles of life returned: hunger, exhaustion, and endless work. The memory of that quiet peace began to call to her. One night, overwhelmed by the weight of her struggles, Ada whispered again, "Rest, I call you. Let me borrow your peace for a few days." Death appeared once more, reminding her, "Do not borrow me too often. There is always a price." This time, I asked for 3 days of rest. Before she closed her eyes, she left Kobe with her neighbor, telling them she had to visit a distant farm. She then lay down in the forest and let her soul drift into the quiet embrace of death. When she returned, Ada felt lighter and more at peace. She told herself it was the only way to keep going. Whenever life became unbearable, she would wander into the forest and borrow rest again. At first, Ada borrowed only for a day or two, but as time passed, she began to ask for longer periods. 3 days turned into a week, and soon Ada found herself staying in the forest for 2 weeks at a time. Kobe became worried. "Mama, why do you always go away?" he asked. Ada stroked his hair and said softly, "Go to find food for us, my son. Don't worry, Mama always comes back." But deep inside, Ada knew her disappearances were taking a toll on her son. One day, Ada borrowed rest for 2 whole weeks. Life had become too heavy to bear, and the thought of peace was irresistible. She ventured deep into the forest, farther than she had ever gone before, and found a quiet spot beneath an ancient tree. As she lay down, she whispered, "Rest, I am ready." Death touched her gently, and once again, her soul drifted into a calm, dreamless sleep. The villagers noticed her absence, but they assumed she had traveled far to find food or work. Kobe, however, stayed by the door of their hut every day, waiting for his mother to return. "Mama will come back," he whispered to himself, even as his hope began to waver. Neighbors brought him food and comforted him, but Kobe couldn't stop blaming himself. "She's tired because of me," he thought. 2 weeks passed, and Ada did not return. The villagers grew worried and formed a search party to look for her. "She must be lost," they said. "Or maybe something terrible has happened." Kobe begged to join the search, but the elders told him to stay behind. "We will find your mother," they promised. The search party combed the forest, calling Ada's name. Finally, they found her lying beneath the ancient tree, her body still and cold. At first, they thought she was asleep, but no matter how hard they tried, she wouldn't wake. "She looks peaceful, like she's dreaming," one villager said. They decided to carry her body back to the village. Kobe ran to meet them when they returned, his heart pounding. "Mama," he cried, rushing to her side. Obie, the healer, examined Ada's body. He placed his hand on her forehead and closed his eyes, listening to the whispers of the spirit world. After a long silence, he shook his head. "Her spirit is gone," Obie said gravely. "Death has taken her for good." The villagers gasped, and Kobe collapsed to the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. "Mama, come back," he cried. Obie turned to the crowd and explained. Ada had been borrowing rest from death for a long time. She wanted peace so badly that she ignored the warnings. This time, death refused to let her return. The villagers were shocked. "Borrowing rest? What does that mean?" they asked. Obie told them about Ada's secret, how she had struck a deal with death to escape her pain. She wanted relief from her struggles, Obie said, but in doing so, she left behind her responsibilities. Death warned her, but she kept borrowing rest until her time finally ran out. The villagers were silent, their hearts heavy with grief. They couldn't believe Ada had been carrying such a burden alone. Kobe, overwhelmed with guilt, whispered through his tears, "It's my fault. She was tired because of me." Mama NECA, a kind woman in the village, knelt beside Kobe and held him close. "No, my child," she said gently. "Your mother loved you more than anything. She carried her struggles because she wanted to give you a better life, but her choices were her own. None of this is your fault." Kobe listened, but the guilt still weighed heavily on his heart. The next day, the villagers buried Ada beneath the tall tree where they had found her. They gathered around her grave, their faces filled with sorrow. Obie spoke to them, his voice calm but firm. "Let Ada's story teach us a lesson," he said. "Life is full of struggles, but death is not the answer. When we are alive, there is hope. Things can change in just one day, but in death, there are no second chances." The villagers nodded, taking Obie's words to heart. Many of them had felt overwhelmed by their own hardships, but Ada's story reminded them to cherish life and to help one another through difficult times. They promised to look out for each other so that no one else would feel the need to borrow rest. After Ada's burial, The villagers began to change the way they lived. If a family was short on food, others shared what they had. If someone was overwhelmed with work, neighbors came to help. They realized that they were stronger together, and that kindness and community could lighten even the heaviest burdens. They didn't want anyone to feel as alone as Ada had. Kobe was taken in by Mama NECA, who treated him like her own son. She cooked for him, told him stories, and did everything she could to make him smile. But no matter how much she cared for him, Kobe couldn't stop missing his mother. Every night, he cried quietly, whispering to himself, "Mama left because of me." Mama NECA noticed his sadness and decided to talk to him one evening. She sat beside him as he stared at the moon. "Kobe," she said softly, "your mother loved you more than anything. She tried to rest because life was hard, but that was never your fault. You were the reason she kept coming back. She fought to stay alive for you." Kobe wiped his tears and nodded, though the guilt still lingered in his heart. Life slowly moved on in the village, but Kobe still carried the weight of his mother's choices. Every week, he visited her grave beneath the tall tree. He brought flowers he picked from the fields and sat beside her, talking as if she could hear him. "Mama, I'm doing my best," he would say. "Mama NECA is kind to me, but I miss you so much. I promise I'll make you proud." The villagers often saw him there and felt both sorrow and admiration for the boy who carried his mother's love in his heart. As the seasons passed, Obie decided to gather the children of the village under the same tall tree where Ada was buried. He told them her story in simple words, hoping they would learn from her choices. Ada borrowed rest to escape her pain, Obie explained, but it came at a price. She didn't realize that even in the hardest times, life has hope. If she had asked for help or waited just a little longer, maybe things would have turned around for her. The children listened intently, their eyes wide with curiosity. "Do you know what Ada's story teaches us?" Obie asked them. A small boy raised his hand and said, "That we shouldn't give up?" Obie smiled and nodded. "Yes, that's right. Life is hard sometimes, but when we help each other, the pain becomes lighter. And remember, even if today is bad, tomorrow could be the day your life changes for the better. Never forget the gift of being alive." The children clapped and cheered, taking the lesson to heart. Over time, Ada's story became a part of the village's history. Elders told it during gatherings, and it was written down so future generations could read it. The villagers wanted to teach their children to appreciate life, no matter how hard it might seem. Kobe grew into a kind and wise young man. Though he still missed his mother deeply, he carried her memory with pride. He worked hard to help others, offering food to those in need and comforting those who were sad. "Mama taught me to love, even in the hardest times," Kobe would say. "I will live the way she would have wanted me to." The villagers admired him, seeing Ada's spirit in his actions. One day, Kobe decided to build a small shrine near his mother's grave. It was a place where people could come to remember Ada and reflect on the value of life. He carved her name into a smooth stone and surrounded it with flowers. "This is for Mama," he said quietly. The shrine became a place of hope and remembrance. Villagers often visited, leaving small offerings of fruit or lighting candles as they prayed for strength and guidance in their own lives. Ada's story even spread to neighboring villages. Travelers came to hear about the woman who had borrowed rest and to see the shrine her son had built. "She taught us to appreciate life," the villagers would say. "No matter how hard things are, there is always hope." Obie often stood by the shrine, speaking to visitors about the importance of unity and perseverance. Ada made a mistake, he would tell them, but we all learned from it. She showed us that running away from problems doesn't solve them. We must face life with courage and lean on each other when things get tough. Visitors nodded thoughtfully, touched by the wisdom of Ada's story and the love she had for her son. Mama NECA grew older, and Kobe cared for her just as she had cared for him. "You're a blessing, Kobe," she often told him. "Your mother would be so proud of the man you've become." Kobe would smile and say, "I owe everything to you and Mama. I will always try to honor her memory by helping others, just like she did." The village of Omu became known as a place where no one struggled alone. If someone needed food, shelter, or comfort, the villagers came together to provide it. They had built a strong community where kindness and compassion were more valuable than gold. Ada's story had changed them forever, teaching them that even in the hardest times, life was a gift. Kobe often told Ada's story to the children of the village, reminding them to cherish life and to find strength in one another. No matter how hard things get, you can find a way through it, he would say. Don't borrow rest, borrow courage, borrow hope, and lean on the people who care for you. The children listened closely and promised to live bravely, inspired by Ada's story and Kobe's example. As the years passed, Ada's name was spoken with respect throughout the land. Her shrine remained a symbol of hope and a reminder to appreciate life's struggles and blessings. The villagers never forgot the lesson she taught them. Life is a gift, and no matter how difficult it gets, being alive means having a chance to change things. Ada's love, sacrifice, and story lived on, reminding people to treasure every moment of their lives. I hope you enjoyed this story. Like, share, and comment your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Bye for now.